Question number 67 was one of my favorite questions on this particular mock. The question was one of the two critical reasoning questions that we had on the paper. Now, if you read the question stem, it wants to know which one of the following exhibits a flawed pattern of reasoning most similar to the flawed pattern of reasoning in the argument above. This makes it but obvious that there is a flaw in the argument which is given, the argument about snapdragons and beetles and mantises. So the first thing we would want to do is find out the flaw and then compare with the options and see which one of the options also has the same flaw in the reasoning which has been given. Now, coming to the argument, the original argument which is given to you, you have snapdragons always fly in summer if beetles roll in winter. I am sure you are familiar with the cause and effect principle. The cause here in this particular line is beetles rolling in winter, right? And we have the effect that snapdragons will always fly in summer. So let's say that beetles rolling in winter, let's name this A, or let's name this B in fact, right? Then we have A, which is snapdragons always flying in summer. So what we are more or less saying is that B is the cause and A is the effect, or in other words, A will be if there is B. Let's put that down here. Alright, A if B, that's what we have. Now B is connected to again another point brought in here, since the second line of the argument says if beetles roll in winter, then mantises always prey in autumn. Again, we know beetles rolling in winter is B, right? While another thing has been brought in here, which is mantises always prey in autumn. Another set has come in here. We will name the set C, and so we know that if B, then C. So B leads to C also, right? That's what we know. Now the point here is, what is the flaw in this particular argument is that both A and C are connected to B, but it does not necessarily mean that A and C will also be connected to each other as cause and effect, right? See, you will figure that out when you read the last portion of the argument. It says the mantises did not prey this autumn. That C did not happen, right? Because C was mantises preying, so mantises did not prey, C did not happen, and thus snapdragons will not fly, which is A will not happen. So we cannot connect A and C in a cause and effect relationship, even though both A and C are connected, are effects, let's say, are connected as effects of the same cause, which is B. So that is the flaw in the argument. I am sure you have understood this particular flaw. Now let's move on to which is the option which reflects that same pattern of flawed reasoning. The answer to this question is option C. This is because it's the same flaw in here. Let's try and break it down so that we can figure it out. If Golem is angry, then Dobby is silent. Again, Golem being angry is the particular cause over here. If Golem is angry, then A is going to happen, which is Dobby will be silent. That's what we know, right? I'm sure you're having names, fun with the names given in here, Golem and Dobby and Vader. Anyway, getting back on track, we have if B, then A, or as we said, in other words, the only confusing thing given in here is that the sets have been interchanged in a way that if precedes here, it says if B then A. The original argument was A if B, so it's one and the same thing. We know that A will happen if there is B, so we put that down here. Again, moving on, it says in the argument if Golem is angry, then Vader doesn't care. We bring in the third set here, which is Vader doesn't care. If Golem is angry, so if B is there, another thing is going to happen, which is C. So that's what we know. But then again, the flaw in the argument, because as a conclusion it tries to connect A and C as cause and effect. It says Vader cares, which is the opposite of C happening. C was Vader doesn't care, so C not being there is Vader caring, and so it's obvious that Dobby is not silent. A was Dobby being silent. not A is Dobby not being silent, we cannot again connect A and C as cause and effect just because they are both effects of the same cause, which is B, and that is the same flaw that we are looking for. We now know that what is the flawed pattern of reasoning and how it connects in both the original argument and C. I'm also dead sure now that if you read the other options as well, you will see how in some or the other case, minutely perhaps, but then the same pattern of reasoning is not there, and that is how we can eliminate those options and come up with C as the answer to question number 67. Question number 68 was a parajumble question. The text was about this famous philosopher called René Descartes and his most famous work called The Meditations. Also, I'm dead sure you might have heard of Descartes because he came up with this famous dictum which was I am, I think, therefore I am. I'm sure you've heard of that. But then anyway, getting back on track, let's move on with this question. You had to figure out which one of the options given here, A, B, C or D, concluded, or let's say fulfilled the paragraph fitted in there, and that's what we have to find out. Now the text talked of how Descartes speaks of involuntary sensations, or since there is something or the other always going on in your mind is also aware of whatever changes are happening in there, or whatever sensations are happening there, whatever sensations are produced. That is what it says. Now the last line, we know that often in para completion questions you have to pay absolute attention to the last lines over here. It says this result, it says over here, this result allows Descartes to supplement the involuntariness argument, thereby strengthening the inference from line 1 to line 2. So what he's basically doing is that there is something that strengthens his inference, the inference about involuntariness argument, which has been mentioned here, the result coming from the last part of the text which is given to us. Now the point here is, if you were to read option C, this is one particular option that continues in line with this particular thought which is described in the passage. This particular option, that is option C, explains how Descartes supplements and strengthens his inference. Since it reads here, I'm sorry, let me read it for you. It says, from the additional premise that nothing can be in my mind of which I am unaware, it follows that if sensation were being produced by activity in my mind, then obviously I would be aware of that activity on the occasion of its operation. So this inference which we talked about in the final lines, this is being strengthened here with an additional premise, which is that nothing can be in my mind of which I am unaware. There's nothing that happens in our minds which we are not aware of. That is what Descartes was pointing out to. And so if there is any sensation being produced by any activity in my mind, it is as a result that I will be aware of it, of the activity happening or the sensations happening in my mind. So that's how we connect C as the continuation of the particular paragraph. It connects to the thought, it adds to the thought. That is how the inference which was mentioned in the paragraph towards the final lines is being strengthened, further strengthened or added on by option C. Now when you go and talk about the other options, option A for instance, it's a question, right? It says what could then be the cause of the sensation. So it's an abrupt question. It just opens up another question abruptly, right? A question which would probably come after C, right? Once you would say how the inference has been proved once and for all, you could have come up with this question then about what could be the cause of the sensation. It would not follow right there after the last line which has been given. Option B is a bit distanced from the given paragraph or the given text in terms of the theme, and the option is somehow very far off from the line of thought that we are being looking for. Now it says Descartes thus emerges as a radical thinker supporting the very essence. It's kind of conclusion, plus it does not have, it has nothing to do with the last line which which was there, the inference that you were drawing or Descartes was drawing, and that is how we come up with we can cancel out this particular option. Option D again is not connected to the idea presented in the paragraph. If you read it, it talks about the body extending or contracting as per circumstances. This is not in line with the reasoning in the passage, and that is how we can eliminate this option 2 and come up with finally with option C as the answer to question number 68. Question number 69 is again a para completion question. The question talked about this person called Surowiecki and how this person had pointed out that crowds often make much more, or let's say better, accurate predictions than single individuals. This is why we choose answer option D as the correct answer. It says a group is better at guessing the number of jelly beans in a jar than any one individual. This is exactly the conclusion that we are looking for after you read the text which is given to you. The option D is the perfect conclusion to the paragraph, and that's why we go with it as the answer, since the passage says, as I will repeat again, it gives examples of the accurate predictions made by crowds, and option D concludes by stating that groups are better at guessing, even if it may be about the number of jelly beans in a jar, they're better at guessing than single individuals. If you are to look at option A, it goes actually against the line of the argument, since it says that the reason it's so hard to beat the point spread in the sports bet is because you're playing against the hordes and hordes know it all. No, this is against the line of the entire argument. We are trying to say that groups are better than any one individuals. That's what the point is. Now option B deals with rules that govern a crowd's success, while the passage does not delve into that particular area. C says the smartest crowds are diverse. It is inept as an option because the passage does not talk about the types of crowds, and hence we go with answer option D as the answer to question number 69.